Hello, everybody. Today we are going to be talking about the Fred the Vampire Accountant series. It's written by Drew Hayes. It currently has 5 books. One of them was literally published a month ago, so there may be more, but as of right now, there's only 5 showing on Goodreads. The first book is, I don't know if you'll be able to read this or not, The Utterly Uninteresting, Unadventurous Tales of Fred the Vampire Accountant. The author really likes alliteration. So yeah, The Utterly Uninteresting, Unadventurous Tales of Fred the Vampire Accountant. The books are a bunch of short stories, so the pacing is super fast. I mean, it's like half an hour to read each story or something. It's not very long, so super quick paced. The premise of these books is you have Fred, who is an accountant and is 28 years old, or would be if he was still aging, who was turned into a vampire about a year ago when the first book starts. And he talks about how his life really hasn't changed because he led such an uninteresting life to begin with. He worked at an accounting firm and didn't interact with customers very much. In his free time, didn't interact with anybody. He didn't have any friends. He was just a super introvert. And now that he's an accountant, or he's always been an accountant, now that he's a vampire, he basically just opened up his own firm and works from home at night. And so the whole point is that Fred is not an interesting person. And all of the sudden he meets this person from his past, and she is a very interesting person, and all these interesting things happen when she's around. So suddenly his life picks up and he doesn't really know how to deal with that. So the pacing of these is really fast. Like I said, short stories. So half hour, 45 minutes to read each story. So you don't really have time for filler. Each story is self-contained. They do build on each other a little bit just because characters are added in each one, and then those characters continue on through the next ones. But I mean, it is a book, so you just read them in order. So I wrote down that these are both quick paced and leisurely paced, and the reason is that everything happening around Fred is pretty quick paced, and he's like, whoa, I don't know how to do this thing. I don't know how to process this. So his whole like storyline is leisurely paced. Everything else happening is quick paced. There's a lot of dialogue. The narration is in first person perspective. So the main character is either talking to somebody else or he's talking to us. There's a lot of dialogue. These are not densely written. They've got multiple plot lines in the sense that it's got multiple stories in the book. Little encased short stories. Not multiple plot lines as in like not being told, there's no one else's story being told or anything. The characterization for this book is, there is no characterization for this book. No, there is, but there's no character development. I mean, literally, like, there is zero character development. He says repeatedly, I am your stereotypical nerd. And then he goes on to describe that as being super quiet, very introverted, super good at math, afraid of any sort of physical confrontation, not good with sports, overweight. Like, these are the things that he describes himself as, and says that, you know, I'm just your typical nerd. So the author isn't even trying to dance around the fact that he's just like using a stereotype of a person in the books. He's like, here is a prefab person. I'm going to drop him in here. And then the other characters are like that too. You've got your female character, and she is like a wild child and super kick-ass and all of this stuff. And I mean, not to say that every character is like that, but I feel like this is a very well-known trope for female characters. And I I don't miss the characterization. I don't miss the character development because these are just really quick short stories. I feel like if I was to sit down and read like a full-blown novel about him, I'd be like, oh, I'm so bored. What? This isn't even like a person. But it's also, the book is also kind of making fun of the fact that the uninteresting, unadventurous tales of Fred the Vampire Accountant. It's like satire on the fact that he's so boring and uninteresting. So you just have to decide if that's your thing or not. I was kind of surprised in retrospect that I liked these books as much as I did, given the fact that there's zero character development. I am not someone who needs tons and tons and tons, but I really need to feel like connect with the character for me to care about like wanting to read the book. Otherwise, I feel like it's a chore for me. I need a character I want to know more about. Otherwise, why bother reading? And so these did a good job of still being interesting without having any character development. But you just have to decide if that's something you're okay with or not. These are very action-oriented books. Every short story is him getting himself into some crisis, or really usually the female character getting him into some sort of crisis, and then either him or his whole team figuring out a way out of it. Every story. That's it. Crisis averted. Crisis averted. So, I mean, again, it's just a super lightweight, fun, easy little read. The frame of this is, so he becomes a vampire and basically through that finds out that all the other magical creatures we didn't think actually existed, in fact, do exist. So the frame is this, they move around a little bit. Some of the stories take place in different cities, but he lives in some kind of rural town in Colorado, and it's filled with vampires and werewolves and all sorts of other creatures. And that's basically the extent of what you find out about it. There is very little detail given. Again, this is like, there's no fluff in these stories. There's no character development. There's no real world building. It's like, hey, you've heard of vampires and other books? Cool. You've heard of werewolves and other books? Cool. They're in these. And so you get just like this quick little meaty, again, crisis averted story, and then you move on to the next one. They're usually, it's almost like Aesop's fables, where there's some sort of like at the end of each one, the main character's like, this is the lesson I learned. So, I mean, it's not quite as cheesy as that, but it is heartwarming. He learns little lessons in each one, and he isn't necessarily funny, but the stuff that happens to him is funny, and his reaction is often funny because he's just like, I live in my own little world, and now all of these things are happening, and I don't know how to deal with it. So there's definitely some humor in these books. Obviously, magic is a thing. We're talking about fairies and werewolves and vampires, and so this is almost like a joke on fantasy. If you ever saw in Rocky and Bullwinkle, they had the fractured fairy tales. I almost feel like that's what this is. It's just like a tiny little fractured fairy tale is each story. The books are super conversational. It's literally just him either having a conversation with you or having a conversation with the people around him. So again, super easy read. No flowery text that you're going to need to untangle, nothing like that. I know some books that have vampires in them, you meet older vampires and the can get real dense because they have this way of speaking that's very extravagant and eloquent and old-timey. So there's like the syntax is maybe a little bit different and that sort of thing. None of that. None of that. So the the audiobooks are kind of interesting. So, I mean, the name of the book is The Utterly Uninteresting, Unadventurous Tales of Fred the Vampire. And it's narrated by Fred. So the audiobook narrator has decided to basically sound like he's been shot with a tranquilizer dart. He's been shot with a tranquilizer dart and is about to like keel over into his food. He literally sounds like he's 97% asleep while he's talking. I've gotten kind of used to it, and my husband got in the car and my phone automatically started playing the book, and he was like, "What is wrong with that guy?" I was like, "Oh, it's a shtick that he's doing. It's not." He's actually narrated another book that I listened to. I think it was Gone Girl, and he sounded completely normal in that. So this is done intentionally, and if you can look past that, if it doesn't bother you, if you think that's humorous because it totally goes with the vibe of the book, which it does, cool, read the audiobooks. Because otherwise, he does a great job. But it did take me a little while to get past because I was just like, we've been here for 10 minutes and he's gotten like 3 sentences out. So you've been warned. Like I said, if you think that's funny or you think that's going to add a layer to the book, totally get it. You can get it at King County, Pierce County I think has it, and Seattle Public also. I'm pretty sure all 3 of them have it. So as a downloadable audiobook, super easy. Again, if that's not your thing, just get the book. You'll be done with it in like 3 hours. It's no big deal. So all right, friends, that was the Fred the Vampire Accountant series. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content, then make sure to subscribe before you leave. And until next time, happy reading. I just opened my mouth a little bit.